What do you call strawberries playing the guitar?
And I don't know.
A jam session.
Oh, don't.
Hungry Squared, bringing you the best food talk anywhere.
Welcome to the Hungry Squared podcast where the brain and belly meet. I'm Sharon from the Wasatch Cooking Guide.
And I'm Winter from theredparty.com. This week, we're talking all about figs. California figs also.
Figs are good.
Yeah, they are. With our special guest, Linda Cain from Valley Fig Growers. We're just super excited to have her on.
We are very excited. She gave us a lot of in-depth knowledge about our friend, the fig.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Hi, Sharon.
Hi.
How are you feeling?
Terrible.
Oh, she's here, you guys. You don't even know. I was like, oh, she's going to pass out while we're recording the podcast. That's not going to be good.
I almost did earlier.
If you hear a clunk, that's Sharon passing out on our table, on the side of the table.
I'm recovering from the pneumonia.
And we mentioned that.
Needs a
Yeah. It's been a nasty, nasty flu and cold and season this year.
Yeah, that's gross, man.
Yeah, everybody's gone down with something. It's not been awesome. So, with that being said, did you eat very much this week?
No, I didn't. I have had a lot of tea.
Okay.
And a lot of my new favorite, Campbell's.
Oh, no.
Chicken noodle home style condensed soup.
Yeah, that's some good stuff right there.
Yeah.
Classic.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner sometimes.
Geez. Well, you need some basic nutrients like salt.
Yeah. Salt and broth.
And brothy stuff.
Yeah. It's not real heavy on the chicken, just the chicken flavor.
That's fine. It works.
Yeah.
Because you don't need anything like we talked about in our episodes for when you're sick. Like foods for when you're sick. You don't want too many heavy, fat, sugary, blah, blah, blah. You just need basic chicken noodle soup.
Yeah. So I am kind of proud of myself. I have been feeling better. I've been sick for about 10 days now. And I have been feeling slightly better than I was. I was sick. I got worse. I went into the doctor. I started to get better and then I got worse. And so I went into the doctor again. And now I think I might be starting to get better. Last night I made my own tea. I made a little tincture.
Okay.
Tincture, if you will, of oregano tea.
Oh, and?
It was
oregano, honey, what? Or just straight oregano?
Oregano with a little bit of honey.
Uh-huh.
I chopped up some oregano.
Fresh?
Mm-hmm, fresh oregano.
Okay.
And I used about 6 tablespoons, probably, of the oregano.
That's legit.
And I boiled it simmered, light boil / simmered in 2 cups of water for about 10 minutes. And it was really green.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was really
green.
Oregano-y.
Yep.
Or oregano, because I've been watching the Great British Baking Show on Netflix. But yeah, and then I put a little bit of honey in there. But it was actually, I felt not like a jolt of energy, but I felt okay.
Oh.
Like I was sickly feeling, and then I felt okay.
Okay, well that's good.
So if you are sick, try the oregano tea or the oregano tea.
The oregano tea and the Campbell's chicken noodle country style condensed soup.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Oh man.
What did you eat this week, Winter? I'm sure it was way more exciting than what I had.
I think it was a little bit more exciting. So this year I kind of missed the boat. When it came to Chinese New Year. It was on the 16th of February. That was my birthday weekend. So we just had stuff going on. And so I didn't throw a party like I usually do.
That's like a double New Year because it's a New Year for you.
Yeah.
And it's Chinese New Year.
Yeah, I kind of should have done something, but I just didn't. Once again, I couldn't get my crap together. I was just like, what's my problem? But kind of the thing that we do every year is hot pot. And if anybody knows what that is, it's just a bunch of pots of boiling broth.
Which is yummy.
Fragrant broth with usually ginger and maybe some onions and that type of thing. And then lots of raw ingredients that are on different plates. It's really pretty set out and everything. And people just go in and plop stuff into the broth and cook it. So it's kind of it's like
it
fondue.
yourself.
Yeah, kind of a thing. And we've done that before for Chinese New Year. Gosh, I think several years in a row. And this is probably the first year I haven't done it, which was a little weird. So when Lee's like, what do you want to eat for dinner on Sunday? I was like, can we do hot pot? Because I haven't done hot pot yet this year. And this is my way of justifying that we keep our actual hot pot because we have one that's very specific.
Yes, you do.
And so I have to use it at least once a year, or else I have to throw it away or give it away or sell it or something. So that's what
don't do that.
Yeah.
We'll come over more often and we can have hot pot together.
So
it's really good.
So we just invited a couple of friends over, and that was a lot of fun just to sit around the table. That's the thing that was pretty great was usually when we do our Chinese New Year party, there's like a bazillion people in our house.
Yeah.
And everything's set out on the table, but you can't sit down at the table. You have to come and get your food, fish stuff out, put some more stuff in and walk away and go sit in the living room or somewhere else or go hang out in the hallway. This was really fun because we've always not had enough room at the table.
So you're telling me that you hooga'd it.
We kind of hooga'd it. It was very cozy and warm, and we had yummy food, and we just ate a lot of food. I was like, Lee, that's way too much food for the amount of people that are coming. And I was like, we pretty much decimated it. Like there was just a little bit of leftovers. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds really good.
It was nice. Yeah, we totally hooga'd it. If you haven't listened to that episode, those couple of episodes, it's a good one.
Mm-hmm. We might do a summer hooga. Who knows?
You can summer hooga?
Yeah. It's not just for the winter.
Well, we might have to summer hooga that up. So that's what I ate, and it was great. I'm sorry yours was not as exciting. But I'm glad you're back, Sharon.
Me too.
And now for the main course.
Okay, now for this week's topic at hand, we've got an interview with Linda Cain from Valley Fig Growers. Their website is valleyfig.com. And we've got a lot of fun stuff in our show notes this week, so check it out there. We've got fun recipes and other things like that. There is also a discount code that Linda's offering to our listeners at their website, which is valleyfig.com. And that discount code is H2 for 25% off your order until March 27th.
Which is totally awesome. This was really, Sharon, I'm going to just say this. This was one of my favorite interviews because I learned a ton.
Yeah, she is a fountain of information.
Yeah, and she's just super excited about it. And I think what I didn't realize this going into it, but like the people that are in the fig business they're
in it to win it.
They're in it to win it. They've been in it for a long time because it's kind of a generational, like families have been in it for years,
Lots
centuries.
of family farmers.
And they are very, I don't know how
They're very dedicated.
They're very dedicated and they love their product. And it was fun to talk about kind of the anatomy of the figs and just how they get pollinated. And it was very fun. It was a great interview. And we hope you guys like it too. She mentions a contest that's going to be happening at some point in time. So let's talk about that, listeners.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
We are going to talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. So listen in. You will love it.
Linda Cain has been involved in the wonderful world of California figs, working with Valley Fig Growers since 1994. Like many fig lovers, she too had a grandmother and mother who had a fig tree in the backyard. Prior to Valley Fig Growers, Linda worked with Del Monte Foods, S.C. Johnson, and Kroger. Originally a New Yorker and graduate of Cornell University, the siren song of California and the dried fruit industry proved irresistible, and Linda has been with Valley Fig Growers as the VP of Marketing and Sales. She has a shameless love of these inverted flowers and can sing the praises of figs for hours on end. Linda, we're really excited that you're with us today. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me today.
You have had quite the storied history with foods and also figs. I think it's awesome.
I have, yes. I've been drawn to the food industry. I started out working with Kroger's in Houston when I first got out of my undergraduate program, and then worked with Kroger's and King Soopers in a buying capacity, and went back to Cornell to pick up my MBA, and took a brief detour into the world of home care products, and then came back out to the West Coast and found a home with Del Monte for a few years, and then I've been with Valley Fig Growers, for nearly 24 years now. It's been a terrific run. It's hard to get out of the California dried fig industry once you're embedded into it. It's quite a wonderland.
It does sound like a wonderland, and I'm excited that we're going to jump into it a little bit more. I can't believe you've been in it for 24 years. That's pretty awesome.
I know. It surprises me too. But, there's just such a love of product of our California figs and our Blue Ribbon Orchard Choice and our Sun-Made brands. We do a lot of trade shows, and the reason in my bio I alluded to the fact that both my mother grew up in Portugal, and it seems like everybody there had a fig tree in the backyard. But we go to trade shows, and we have people from Toronto and Seattle and Chicago and Miami that come up to us and say, oh, my grandmother had a fig tree in the backyard. And it's just such an evocative product, and just it really is an item that has memories and a lot of passion for many people.
That is cool. I don't think I had a fig tree growing. My parents didn't have a fig tree, but I think that's really cool.
There's just a lot of history for a lot of people, and from what I'm hearing, it's remarkable to figs that it just doesn't seem like there's the amount of passion and an amount of memories associated with figs that we've seen in other products. But it's interesting, and it's a really fun product and a fun line to work on.
So, talking about memories of figs, can we talk about a history of figs in culture? Because recent culture, many people have memories of grandparents growing figs and things like that. But how did the fig originate? Do you know how far back it goes? Like how far back we have a record of figs and how that's affected like religion and culture and food?
Well, I don't know that we can put an exact date to it, but there's recorded Nature magazine probably maybe 10 or 12 years ago did a really in-depth article about figs, and in that article they refer to figs being the oldest known food cultivated to mankind. And the thought is it goes back to 9200, 9400 BC that they have found recorded, or they found remnants of fig orchards. So, with that in mind, that precedes many other cultivated crops that we think of being in that time frame of things like wheat and beans and barley and products like that figs preceded that. And certainly we can go back even further than that in the biblical stories where Adam is wearing a fig leaf in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. I totally didn't even, you're right. It's totally true.
It is, yes. We have all these fun facts that are mentioned to us by fig lovers that come up to us at trade shows and various events that we do. And someone said, do you know that the food that's mentioned most frequently in the Bible is figs? And I had no idea. So, certainly you can look all these fun facts up on Google now. But the person told me that they had gone through the Bible 25 or 30 years ago and counted and realized that fig was at the top of the list. So it's a product that's very rich and just steeped in history and thought to have originated in the Egyptian area.
That is awesome. So if it originated kind of in the old country, right?
That's the thought. Uh-huh.
That's the thought. It has been cultivated for centuries then.
Yes. Uh-huh. And it's thought to have originated in the Middle East, but figs grow on every continent except for Antarctica. So you can find figs in literally, there's a product in Africa, there's product in Asia, there's product in South America, Australia. There's not a location that they don't grow. In fact, once they become established, they're very difficult to eradicate. They have runners that go out, so even if you cut down the primary tree, oftentimes the runners will erupt in a tree longer term, or birds will carry the seeds from figs from many miles away, and a fig tree will pop up. There's an area in Fresno called Fig Garden, and it used to be, I think there were like 60,000 acres of figs back in the early 1900s, and that has now been whittled down to maybe about 10,000 acres. But many of those former orchards were turned into real estate developments, and we still have homeowners that call us and say, I've had this fig tree that keeps coming up, and I keep cutting it down, and it keeps coming up again. Is there any way to get rid of it? And I'm sure there are pretty
radical
ways of eliminating it, but basically, once they're established, they're pretty tough to get rid of. Which most of us think of as a huge upside to the product, but some people who aren't fig fans, the one or two of them that are out there, have said that they were trying to get rid of them and simply can't get rid of the trees.
I had no idea. That's kind of like the aspen trees that we have here in Utah that are everywhere.
Yeah, I didn't realize aspen trees were like that too.
Yeah, they send out runners.
Yeah. Well, and that's probably why fig trees have been able to survive for so long, with that propensity to just, even though people are cutting them down and trying to find a way to eradicate them, they still come back again.
I think that is brilliant. You got to find a way to survive. That's awesome.
That's right. That's right.
Now, Linda, I have a quick question. So you mentioned that the thought is that it originated around in Egypt or so, but you said that it's in every continent except for Antarctica now. How did the fig make its way to America? Because for a bird to bring something over like that, that's a little bit of a ways to fly. So how did the fig make its way to America, and why California specifically?
Well, we'd love to think that there's a recorded history of all this, but we're going mostly by anecdotal information, which is figs, when you dry them, make for a lovely dried fruit product and something that will carry through the winter. So the thought is that the figs migrated towards Italy and Spain over the centuries, and then the Spaniards brought figs to Mexico when they entered into Mexico, and then as they moved up and down the California coast, which was of course owned by Mexico back in the early years of 1700s or so, the missionary fathers were establishing churches and missions up and down the California coast, and they wanted to be able to have a fruit or a food to have as they were going up and down the coast. And the fig tree will produce fruit from May all the way through September or thereabouts. And unlike some fruit trees, if you pick a fig, another fig will replace it. Whereas if you pick an orange, then there is no backup orange to come into that location on the branch. But figs are ever producing. So the thought was that they were planted so that the missionary fathers would have food as they went from mission to mission, all the way from San Diego, all the way up past Sonoma, and here on the west coast of California. So that brought in the dark fig, what we call the mission fig, and that's how it got its name, from the missionary fathers that planted those figs up and down the California coast.
Linda,
and that was in the late 1700s or so that all that was happening.
That's really cool. You should have seen both Sharon and I. Were like, what is she talking about? This is amazing. Like, seriously, they pluck a fig and another one comes in its place. Like,
exactly. Yeah, so it's an ever producing until the frost hits. So once the frost hits, that stops the production of figs.
Mm-hmm.
But until then, if you pick one, then the branch will push out another fig. I mean, it's not in that exact spot again, but the tree realizes, I need to produce more fruit because one's gone. It's like milking a cow, I guess, that, if you keep up the production of it, the tree will continue to produce. It won't be the robustness, and you won't get as many figs as you would have in the middle of the top producing time period in the summer, but it will continue to produce until the first frost hits. So we have what we call black figs or mission figs here on the west coast or in California, and then the other fig we have is what we call a golden fig. And under the golden fig, there's several varieties that fall under that, including a Calamurna, Tina, a Sierra, a Canadria. But when we say black figs, there's only one variety that falls under that, and that's the mission fig that I just spoke of that was planted by the missionary fathers. But in California, we have a golden fig called a Calamurna, and originally that was brought over, I'm thinking the time period was in the late 1800s, and it was brought over because the land in Fresno is not particularly fertile. It's actually just a lot of hard pan, and it's really, really difficult to plant anything and grow anything. It's almost like a desert area during the summertime. We just simply don't get rain. So the gentleman who planted, his name was Roding, ended up dynamiting the ground and planting fig trees because the ground is just that hard.
Really? Dynamiting the ground to loosen things up?
Stick a dynamite in, blasted the hole out, and planted a tree.
Oh, my goodness.
That's some fun farming.
So the climate in the Central Valley is not unlike that of the Mediterranean, where figs, and the top producing fig area in the world is Turkey. Followed closely by Iran, Iraq. There's some production in Greece. But it's more that kind of the Mediterranean pocket, and I think the U.S. is probably 5 or 7 on the list right now of who produces figs throughout the world. So the climate replicates very closely that Mediterranean type of weather where we just don't get rain in the summertime, and it's pretty dry and dusty, and the figs thrive in those type of conditions.
Oh, I was going to kind of go into that.
So we have the mission figs from the 1700s, and then in the late 1800s, the white figs began making an appearance, mostly in the form of a Calamurna, which was California and Smyrna, Turkey. So Calamurna became the variety that was propagated. And for the first, I want to say 10 or 20 years or so, they could not figure out why the figs weren't growing. And then finally the Roding, I believe, went to Turkey and was trying to find out why, and then discovered that this one variety of fig, the Calamurna fig, had to be pollinated by a Blastivica wasp, which they didn't know. They just couldn't figure out why the figs never matured, but it's because they weren't pollinated. So once they determined that and discovered that they needed to have a capra fig, which is the figs that have the wasp in them that pollinates the Calamurna fig, they began planting these capra fig trees, and then that second crop. So we had the mission figs, and then once they determined exactly how to pollinate these other figs that were brought over from Turkey, then that crop also began to take off.
Okay, so let me just clarify one thing, because I think, well, I have a few questions. So the mission fig itself, because I have heard about these specific fig wasps that are needed to pollinate certain trees.
I have not. Can we talk about that for a minute?
We'll go into depth, but I just want to clarify the mission figs, those black figs, do not need basically do not need to be fertilized by that specific wasp. Is that right?
There's no pollination that happens on probably 95% of the figs grown in California do not need pollination.
Okay.
The fig is an inverted flower, which many people don't know either. So there's never a blossom on the fig tree. Instead, the fruit starts as a little bud, and then it's an inverted flower. So you'll see the fruit mature. It goes from pea size to a regular fruit size, and they all start out as green, and then they change colors as the season progresses.
Okay, so so the black mission figs totally will go through that process. They'll mature. They will get harvested at whenever they get harvested, and that's it. And now, can we go into the fig trees, specifically the Calamurna, or I'm assuming the Smyrna, the original Smyrna fig also needed to have a fig wasp that fertilized it. Is that correct? Or pollinated it?
Pollinated it, exactly. And that's when the researchers went back to Turkey in the early 1900s to find out why the figs in Turkey were maturing, but why they weren't in the U.S. Then they were told, we also have these other fig trees called capra figs, and those figs house a wasp, and the wasp is tiny. If you looked at like an average period at the end of a sentence, that's about half the size of the wasp. They're really tiny, but they reside in these capra figs, and then they go out searching for a place to pollinate because the figs that they grow in have pollen in them, and the Calamurna trees only are the ones that require pollination. So these wasps fly out looking for a new home, and they fly into, and if you look at the eye of a Calamurna fig, it's larger, the base of the fig. So if you were to set it down, it would be, there's what we call an eye in it. And the Calamurna eye is larger than the others because they needed to allow these tiny little wasps to fly in and out. So the wasps fly out of the capra fig, they buzz around looking for a home, and they fly into the Calamurna fig with their pollen on their little feet. They still can't find, they don't think that's a hospitable place for them to be. They fly out again and continue to look for a home, a place to call home. And most of them die in flight. And again, they're teeny, tiny little wasps. It's not like some ginormous honeybee, one of those bumblebees buzzing around. And the growers tie bags of capra figs about every fifth tree or so in the Calamurna orchard. They'll tie these bags of capra figs onto the trees because they want the figs to fly out to find the Calamurna trees to pollinate them. And they go through that process, but because of the labor intensity that's involved in this and the amount of, it's not a hugely producing tree. So most of our growers have gotten rid of those trees, and they've moved over to either Tina figs, which is very similar to a Calamurna but doesn't require pollination. There's also Sierras that they're growing, and there's also Canadria figs. So there's a number of other varieties, and many of our growers have moved away from the Calamurna because of the amount of time and labor that it requires to bring it to maturity.
Interesting. Linda, with the capra figs, those ones themselves, are they considered consumable? Those figs themselves?
I don't believe most growers, no, we don't use those for consumption. Those are strictly starter figs for the Calamurna trees. So they're not consumable figs. Many of our growers also, as a company for Valley Fig growers, so we package under the Blue Ribbon Orchard Choice and Sunmade labels. Sunmade is a sister co-op of ours, and they very kindly allow us to use that Sunmade brand on our California figs. But in addition to that, many of our growers participate in the fresh fig industry. As a company, we don't do that. As a co-op, we don't do that simply because from the time you pick a fresh fig to the time you eat it, you've got maybe 6 to 7 days. So they're very fragile, very short-lived, and we simply don't have the infrastructure to work with that. So our growers work with either their own companies or other external companies that they contract with to sell their fresh figs.
Okay, I was going to ask because I have generally actually only eaten dried figs, and I didn't realize that they were so fragile I guess probably transport is very difficult, and time-wise also, if it's 6 to 7 days.
Exactly, and they have to be shipped under refrigerated conditions. So from the time they immediately get picked in the orchards, and then they're immediately refrigerated as soon as they're picked from the tree and sorted and put into either the 1-pint containers, or they're also going into, it looks like eggshell, the same things that eggs are shipped in, or egg crates.
Mm-hmm.
So each fig has its own little separate compartment so they don't get damaged in transit. So they're just that fragile. They're probably one of the most susceptible fruit products out there for the shortness of a lifespan.
So
which makes them all that more desirable, just because it's still hard to come by, and there's nothing
true.
like eating a fresh fig in the orchard, because you're out there and it's the fig's dry on the tree, so it's typically like 110 degrees, and there's just nothing like pulling out a fresh fig from the orchard and kind of dusting it off and just eating like an apple. You just take a bite out of it, and they're just so delicious.
Okay, I feel like I need to do that sometime in my life now. I've never had a fresh fig. Have you?
Fresno's just a plane trip away.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I don't know if I've had a fresh fig. I've had fig tarts, so I guess that's a fresh fig.
Well, we also have some great fig tart recipes on our website that are made with dried figs, especially we have a fig and nut tart that's really, with chocolate, that's absolutely spectacular.
Oh, hello, chocolate and figs.
Yeah, exactly. Figs and chocolate, exactly, yeah. Figs and prosciutto, figs and blue cheese. Yeah. We do a lot of work with California cheese companies here in Northern California, and point-raised blue cheese with our mission figs, the darker figs. Oh my gosh, you throw them under the broiler for a couple of minutes with some blue cheese or goat cheese on top of it, and it's my gosh, it's so tasty.
That does sound amazing. I love the sweet salty combination. That's exactly what I would be going for.
Yep. Yeah, so a slice of prosciutto wrapped around the blue cheese and the fig is also not a bad way to go.
Okay, can I back up really quickly, because you named off quite a few different fig varieties. Can you go over the ones that are specifically grown in California one more time? So you talked about the mission figs, which are the black figs. You talked about Calamerna, which sounds like a lot of growers are moving away from.
Correct. And then we also have the Sierra fig. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these varieties have been developed. The agricultural school of choice in California, one of them is at University of California, Davis. And Davis has orchards with all sorts of prototypes of figs that they're working with. And I also hasten to add that there has been no GMO work done on fig trees. So we also often are asked the question, are your figs GMO or non-GMO? And the answer is absolutely, just because we're such a small industry that many larger organizations or chemical companies or ag companies have no interest in it, because we're just such a small component of the ag industry out here that it's just not worthwhile for them to make the investment into figs. But we do have a breeding program that goes on at University of California at Davis, and they're always searching for different varieties, and they travel the world looking at different figs and different fig trees and how they grow and what's good and what's bad. And we've worked with a person by the name of Marie Simmons, who wrote a book called Fig Heaven, probably 15 or 16 years ago. And in that book, she alluded to the fact that there's supposed to be something close to well over 1,000 varieties of fig trees throughout the U.S. And to me, it's almost like a red apple, green apple analogy, that there's dark figs, which in our case are mission figs, or there's light figs, which we call golden figs. And under that heading, there's innumerable varieties that can fall under that. So in California, Calamerna fall under the golden heading. Tinas, Sierras, and Canadrias are the biggest varieties that fall under that heading.
And only the mission figs are under kind of the black figs
Correct.
The dark figs rather.
Correct.
Wow, that is.
And we also find, here's the things that you learn after being out of business for over 20 years is that Tina fig, which we call Tina, which when I first came onto this, I thought it was Tina, but it's actually Tena, and apparently the Hebrew word for figs is tenna. So the thought is originally those figs probably came from someplace in the Middle East and were named at Tenna figs for their point of origin.
That's cool. I'm just writing notes down because I'm like, oh, I gotta go to look up those figs.
Well, we talked a little bit about transporting figs to market and things and the eggshell crate type thing. But
for fresh figs, yeah.
For
dried figs were exceptionally hardy. Yeah, dried figs, in fact, the life cycle of the fig is they typically begin, and we'll start with fresh figs because obviously that's how our dried figs start out. So the fresh figs usually have what we call a first crop that comes into production in mid to late May. Typically, it's probably going to be way early this year just because of all the very warm weather we had in January, February. But typically, so what we call old wood is wood that is from last season, so not the new sprouts that come out, because when the fig tree grows and it starts in the springtime, it pushes out new branches. So the first crop comes out on the old branches, which is from the prior year's tree, or the tree but before the new branches push out. So that crop typically starts in mid to late May, and it lasts for maybe 3 weeks or so, sometimes 4 weeks, depending on the crop. And then the tree will sort of go dormant again for about a month, and then the new wood, as well as the old wood, will then have what we call a second crop. So the first crop pretty much all goes to fresh figs just because it's a pretty small crop. It's usually maybe 10 to 15% of all the figs that are produced for the season, and many of our growers pick those as fresh. So the fresh crop will start out in typically mid to late May, sometimes into June, depending on the crop year. And then the tree goes dormant for several weeks, and then it comes back into production again. And again, the growers pick fresh figs from it, but the figs that don't get picked as fresh figs will actually dry on the tree. So unlike grapes, which are often picked and then put on paper to dry out in the orchards, and then they dry into raisins, plums are typically shaken from the tree, and then they go into dryers. Apricots are picked fresh, cut in half, put on trays and dry it out. Figs, as far as I know, are the only crop that's allowed to actually dry on the tree until it reaches its full maturity. They fall to the ground naturally, and then our growers will go in with rakes and sweepers, all mechanized on the back of a tractor, and sweep up the figs, and then they're brought into sorting sheds to be processed. And then after the grower's done processing them in their first stage out in the orchards, then they're brought into our plant for further processing.
Wow, I didn't realize that they were allowed to dry on the tree. Do you know if there's a particular reason why, or is it just it's totally stable there? It doesn't fall off. It doesn't. I mean, it's a good place to have it.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't fall off until it reaches its natural maturity point. So once it falls off, then we know that it's reached its full sugar potential and that it's ready to be consumed as a dried fig. So, and one of the reasons we don't do it is like nut trees, you can't shake a fig tree because you'll pull it out of the ground. And there's really no need to. I mean, for centuries, that's the way figs have been harvested. They've just been allowed to dry naturally on the tree and then fall to the ground when they're harvested. And the reason that it would be much harder to gather if you did that with raisins, just because it's more difficult to pick.
Right.
And I think plums will probably, I don't know if they would rot on the tree if you left them there to dry naturally, just because they're so much larger than figs are.
Mm-hmm.
They do.
So I'm not sure what the botany is on other items, but I know for figs that's always the way that it's been done.
That's kind of a cool way of doing it.
It is.
Yeah, that is
It's really
cool.
cool if you go out in the orchards. When we were shooting our video, you can go out in the orchards and actually hear the figs dropping on a hot summer day.
Oh.
I mean, you hear the plunk, 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 plunk of the figs hitting the ground, because it's so the growers make sure the ground is it's weed free. They tend to it very carefully to make sure it's on hard pan, so the figs will. It's probably why you can hear them so clearly. But they drop to the ground. It's almost like hitting a brick, and you can hear them plunk, plunk, plunk out in the orchards on a nice day.
Oh, that's kind of fun. So I want to talk a little bit about the trees really fast. So those the trees, like you said, kind of they put out runners and such. And how much water do they need? Like, what kind of maintenance do fig trees require?
They're very low maintenance items, and they are typically started out as cuttings. So most of our growers start them out as maybe like knee-high or thereabouts, maybe thigh-high type of plantings when they put them in the ground. They typically begin production in someplace between 3 to 5 years. They'll start pushing figs out after planting. And one of the many, many positive attributes about our fig trees here in California is that they can last forever. You can have an orchard, and some of our growers have orchards that are over 100 years old. We were out, actually we had a tour of some bloggers that came through last September, and we were into an orchard that was pretty close to 100 years old. And they produce, they'll just keep producing and producing and producing. And there's, I think, one of the world's oldest known recorded fruit trees is a fig tree someplace in the Middle East.
Yeah.
But unlike a walnut tree or an almond tree, which have a life of like 20 to 25 years, and then they stop producing or the production declines precipitously, and those trees need to be pulled out and replanted. Figs don't suffer from that. They'll just continue to produce. And given their history of growing up in the Middle East and being developed in the Middle East, they don't require a lot of water, and most of what they require is they take in the rainwater that happens. Usually it rains here in California through about April or so. So the ground provides a significant amount of water for them during that time frame. And then our growers have also gone to drip irrigation for the figs, but they're one of the least water requirement products out there compared to many of the other crops that, particularly like cotton and rice, but even compared to nut trees, they have very low water requirements. And our growers are such environmentalists also because, most of our growers are in this third and fourth generation, and they want to be able to produce and have their children and their grandchildren continue to farm because I think a lot of growers and farmers get raps for, polluting the land. But most of our growers are some of the biggest environmentalists that are out there just because they want to be able to have this land continue in their family and to be stewards of the land and take proper care of things. So they try and minimize fertilizer. They try and minimize water use. They're pretty judicious in all their care and feeding of our products.
I find it very impressive that there are generations of families that have been growing figs. I think that is very impressive. These fig trees probably did very well despite the droughts and such that have happened in California.
They have. Last year it was good. They're very resilient trees, and there's not and there's also very few chemicals and pesticides and herbicides used on figs. Just because of the dried fruit nature of the product, they tend not to suffer from, we always hear sadly about a lot of issues with salmonella and listeria and E. coli, and figs just tend not to have any of those type of issues, or dried figs, just because the moisture level is so low, and we tend just not to have those type of calamities befall the industry. So it's another reason to go to dried fruit because they simply tend not to suffer from those type of things.
And this is why the fig has lasted this long.
Exactly. Really It's not only that, but the nutritional value is just incomparable. We've got
let's talk about that actually.
Yes. So trace minerals, and we don't know if it's because they spend so much time on the tree or because the tree is so resilient and extracts a lot of nutrients from the soil, but, great levels of trace minerals like manganese, magnesium, copper, iron. Figs are some of the highest of any of the dried fruits and nuts that are out there, or any fruit or nut for that matter. More potassium than bananas, ounce for ounce, more calcium than milk, ounce for ounce, and more fiber than prunes, which we tend not to gravitate towards that sort of fiber information, but just because we think prunes have sort of laid claim to that one, but a very nutrient-dense product that carries a lot of not only trace minerals, but also some of the more robust things that people are looking for in their diet.
Yeah, and they're so, once the dried fruit is very, you can pack it in your bag when you're going on a hike. Yep. Yeah. I just want to point out one more time, I don't know if all your listeners heard this, but for ounce per ounce, it has more potassium than bananas, more calcium than milk, and it has
more fiber than a prune.
More fiber than a prune. I don't know if everybody heard that, but that's a power food in my book right there.
Absolutely, yeah. And the other thing that you've alluded to, Winter, is that you can eat these things. Not to disparage our product, but when Nature magazine came out with this article several years ago about the oldest fruit known to mankind, they showed pictures and said, we believe these figs are nearly from 10,000 BC. And I looked at our management, the rest of our management team, and said, they don't look a whole lot different than what we just packaged last week. They are just, they're everlasting, and I'm sure the flavor would be vastly different. But you could eat a dried fig probably 10 years after it was packed, and it would still be fine. It just doesn't, the flavor would change. It would taste more tobacco-y, but they're a very resilient product. We have a 2-year shelf life on all of the product that we pack, so it's something that you can definitely purchase, and we prefer that you consume it immediately just because the flavor does tend to be, and the texture tends to be better the sooner it's consumed, but certainly we can also be plunked in the freezer, and it can last for a year or 2 years in the freezer as well.
Yeah.
So it's a good food storage item too.
Yeah, I was going to say that
Absolutely,
too, Sharon.
yeah.
For all of our prepper friends.
Yeah, exactly. We have quite a few.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is, yep.
So I because I am fresh fig newbie person, I've never. What is the fresh fig flavor compared to a dried fig? Is it way more? I'm assuming it's just really concentrated in a dried fig. And the fresh fig is a little bit, I'm not totally sure because you kind of mentioned sugar, getting the full concentrated sugar and taste when they were dried. So how does a fresh fig usually, how would you describe that?
The fresh fig to me is almost more like a strawberry type of, and it depends. There's so many flavors. The brown turkey is one of the most popular fresh fig varieties that are out there, and we do not dry, or our growers don't provide us brown turkeys to dry just because they tend to be a larger fig and they don't dry well. But I believe one of the more popular varieties for retail for fresh figs is a brown turkey. So it's a pretty large fig. It could be the size of, I want to say almost like a large egg. So it's a pretty sizable item, and that one tends to be pretty sweet and has sort of a brownish, greenish cast to it. Cadotas are also used as fresh figs. Calamernas are fresh figs. Missions are fresh figs. So a lot of the varieties, with the exception of the brown turkey, do start out as a fresh fig and can be sold at retail for fresh. But as you noted, the concentration is pretty significant. So for every 3 pounds of fresh figs, we end up with 1 pound of dried figs. So, and the moisture level typically when we sell it at retail tends to be between about a 25 and 27% moisture level. And I believe, I don't know exactly what it is for fresh figs, but I would assume it'd probably be, I don't know, close to 75 or 80% moisture level compared to what happens when we have dried figs come into the plant.
That moisture level in a dried fig, that's a really ideal place to be. That's not staves away anything growing on it. Like it doesn't. Exactly. It's really.
And that's the what we call a conventional fig. So that's what we would put in our Blue Ribbon Orchard Choice and our Sun-Made packages. We do a pretty significant amount of business in the ingredient/industrial side of things also. Everybody remembers the Fig Newton, and still very popular. I think it's still the number 3 or 4 selling cookie behind Oreos and Chips Ahoy here in the U.S. But also just a host of new applications that we're seeing because figs were named the flavor of the year by one of the top flavor houses in the world. So we're seeing a lot of activity that were being used in everything from Greek yogurts to ice creams, gelatos, all types of applications in bakery products and things like nutrition bars. Were particularly noteworthy in candies that a fig dipped in dark chocolate or paired with nuts is simply spectacular, wonderful in ice cream. So we're seeing a lot more interest in these industrial ingredient applications as well.
So Valley Fig growers, they obviously package, like you said, just the dried figs that you can eat straight. I kind of looked a little bit more into it, and you guys also do, like for kind of larger manufacturing for Fig Newtons for other kind of baked goods and spreads. You guys also process that type of thing with maybe some figs that are not as cosmetically perfect?
Exactly. Yes, okay. We call them cosmetically challenged. Yes.
Oh.
May have like a sunburn because figs are a lot like other, if there's no leaf covering it, sometimes they'll get sunburn when they're drying on the tree. So when that happens, they're not perfect enough to put in our consumer and our retail packs, but they're terrific to grind up into something like fig paste or fig concentrate. We have a lot of use for fig concentrate that's going into everything from vinegars to elixirs to actually a lot of home brewers, and some of the larger brew companies out there are including fig concentrate in a fruit beer. There's another company that we're working with that does a vodka, another one that does a fig and walnut rum. So we're definitely getting a lot of interest, and the amount of perfumes and body scrubs and candles and things like that are using figs. We're also seeing quite a jump in that as well.
Can we talk a little bit about cooking and baking with figs?
I don't do enough of that, honestly.
I don't either. I'm I mostly consume dry figs.
Me too. That's it.
And then I've had a fig tart before and it was really good, but I don't know like kind of how to incorporate that into what I'm already making.
Oh my gosh, they're perfect even as a salad topping. If you dice figs up and put them in a salad topping,
oh wow,
put them in your oatmeal in the morning, again, you get such a nice nutritional bump from including, even if it's just 2 or 3 figs. A serving size of figs provides an excellent source of fiber for the day. So, just including 4 or 5 figs in an item, depending on the fig size, will really provide you a nice nutritional bump in the morning. But we pair well with chicken, with pork, with salmon. If you go to our website, which is valleyfig.com, we've got so many wonderful recipes there, and literally everything from what you're both talking about, from snacking all the way to dessert items. We've got one of my favorites is a fig and goat cheesecake. It's a pan bar, and it's absolutely fabulous. It's just really good. But there's, I want to say we've probably got 80 to 100 recipes on our website currently. They work beautifully in breads and salads. We've even got some soup recipes, because figs and pork soup is a very traditionally consumed recipe in Hong Kong, where the equivalent of what if we're not feeling well in the U.S., we make a chicken noodle soup. In Hong Kong, you would make a fig and pork soup to put yourself on the fast track to feeling better.
Linda, my family's from Hong Kong. I don't think I knew this, but actually when you're saying that, I'm like, I think I've actually had something like that. I didn't realize what it was.
I'm telling you, it's a very evocative product.
Oh my goodness.
There is, in fact, when I went to Hong Kong a couple of years ago, there was Swanson was making a canned fig and pork soup. Like, really?
Wow.
So it's like, the Campbell's chicken noodle soup, and over in Hong Kong, they had the Swanson's fig and pork soup. And I suspect it's probably just because of the nutritionally, the figs and it's just a great combination to help open up your sinuses. So
I'm putting that on the bucket list for this winter to make
we have a recipe on our website,
a pork and fig
that has
soup.
the fig and pork combination.
Okay.
So if you're wanting to bring one of those to work and share it with your friends, I think that'd be a good thing.
Sharon,
But you can put figs in almost anything, even if it's just as a separate addition. But they're also so tasty in breads and cereals. We sell to the top cereal companies, so we can have figs taste like many other fruit items. So when you think you're eating a blueberry in your hot oatmeal cereal, it's actually a fig piece flavored like a blueberry.
What?
Because it's nutrient dense. Well, it's declared on the package, but it's a great addition. So it's actually very nutrient dense. It holds up better than a blueberry piece would in oatmeal, and it's cost efficient for the manufacturers that we work with.
Oh man, I know you guys declare on the packaging, but sneaky foods and giving your kids better foods.
That's awesome.
Well, exactly. You're getting a better nutritional punch by eating a fig than you would, and it holds up well. So when we do a fig piece, it holds up really well in a hot cereal application.
Oh yeah, it totally would.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's so smart.
It is, and it's quite nice. We work with a lot of the chocolate companies here on the West Coast too, some of the higher end ones, to include figs in some of the products that they're working with and developing. Okay. I can't think of, honestly, no, not to be jaded about this, but I can't think of anything that figs wouldn't go well in. There's just so many different range of products, and anything you can put a dried fruit in, a fig would substitute nicely for it. And it just also adds a great nutritional. It's got texture. It's got those crunchy little seeds that so many people like.
Yeah, I love that texture. That is kind of fun. I agree. Now that I think about it, I was like, yeah, why wouldn't I add that to a salad easily? That just would be a nice addition. And it would be, it's
a lot tastier than the dried cranberries.
I agree.
I'm just going to put that out there.
Dried cranberries can be a little tart for me. I just don't do tart as well. So I'm like, yeah, give me the sweetness of a fig.
Oh, put it on a pizza too. If caramelized onions with some either what we call a loose fig paste that was you could break down with adding some water to some and putting it in a blender or putting it in a food processor and spreading it on top of a pizza with some arugula on top. It's really quite tasty also.
Wow.
Oh, and then I'm thinking of the cheese combination that you could put on that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Blue cheese and figs. We also work with Marin French, which does a phenomenal triple cream brie that's really quite tasty. And Laura Chanel with her goat cheeses. Figs and goat cheese pair so well together also. So any of those as a salad topping are great. Or, the one thing I've got to rave about is a grilled cheese sandwich made with fig spread. And in fact, that's on our newsletter this month. It's got spinach, garlic, brie cheese, and it makes for a lovely grilled cheese sandwich.
Oh, yum. Spinach, garlic, and the fig spread.
Yeah.
And blue
Once
cheese.
again, the sweet, salty combination sounds
Absolutely,
amazing.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, throw a slice of prosciutto on there while you're at it.
Yeah,
we've done a number of contests on our website where we're asking people for recipes, and the grilled cheese comes up time after time. It's just a classic way to use California dried figs.
That is awesome. Okay, you guys, I'm going to, I will put a link in the show notes, several links in the show notes, especially to valleyfig.com, because they do have loads of recipes. Because once again, like, I'm going to be honest, I just have really only eaten them as a snack. And so, but why not use them in all sorts of other things to have a little bit of a surprise when you're making something that is
versatility and a flavor punch.
Yeah, exactly. And nutritionally awesome too. So I will put a link in the show notes. So check it out. I'm a little curious. Linda, are you guys doing any contests at any point in time? Because I think people would love a good challenge. Maybe I'll just tell people to go to the Instagram of Valley Fig, and they can go ahead and just keep an eye on that and see if there's any contests coming out.
We do. We have a Mother's Day contest that's fast approaching. So we work with the television show Cook's Country, based in Boston, and yes, so they are. We're pairing up with them, and we're going to give away a trip to go visit their new show location on the Boston waterfront. So keep an eye out for that event that's coming up, and we're going to be running it through April and May.
And can you remind us what Instagram, or do they go to the website and there will be more information there as well?
Absolutely, yeah. If you go to valleyfig.com, we'll have a click to enter the contest.
Awesome. Okay.
And that'll be coming up in the next month or so.
Okay, you guys, I feel like that's a challenge for us listeners. You're our listeners here, because you guys are inventive and smart and love to cook and do cool things with different types of ingredients. And this one, I think, is a good one that we kind of need to start incorporating more into our food, I think.
I think so too, as a slightly non-objective person, but it's a great product to work with. It's nutritionally it's incomparable on a nutrition and plus flavor-wise. And as you both Sharon and Winter, as you mentioned, a lot of people do use them for snacks, especially athletes, because of the potassium and replenishment. But they're also great to tuck into your kid's lunch. We've got a 2-ounce bag that we sell that works really well for those type of applications. And we're also finding more use in the meal prep type of uses. So we're working with several of the organizations that your dinner arrives on your front door and you cook it yourself. So we're working with those type of venues as well, just to really help provide something new and different and unusual that people don't expect to find in their everyday meal preparations.
Oh man, this has been so interesting, Linda. Thank you so much for your time today.
I appreciate your time.
Yes,
I'm glad I could wear the sash for Valley Fig Growers today and really help promote the product. We used to joke about going to trade shows and nobody would talk to us, and now we're at a point where people are actually just saying, "Oh yeah," because everybody, 20 years ago, people were thinking, "Oh, figs, nobody knows about those," and there's what's good about it. But with such a movement to knowing your grower, local, healthy, good for you, figs are really starting to find more of a home amongst the consumer groups than we ever have before.
Yeah, you guys are the original. You're the old school. Like,
we are the old school.
This is where it's at.
It is, and our growers are just epitomize that. They're just down home guys. That their grandfathers and great grandfathers are the ones dropping the dynamite into the hole to blast out the tree.
Which I totally love.
It is, yes. You can see some images of that probably on some of the websites that are out there. But it's a really iconic thing and just almost indigenous to California, because there are no other places in the United States where the figs dry naturally on the tree. It's the only place that figs grow commercially for commercial purposes in the entire United States, just because we've got the best weather for those type of applications.
Yeah. California. What are we doing here in Utah? Well, Linda, once again, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much. This has been delightful. I've learned a ton. I mean, that was very interesting. I feel like I'm gonna enter that Mother's Day contest, you guys. So,
and something that would be
Absolutely.
helpful.
We'd love to have, because it's a way for us to also think, oh my gosh, we hadn't thought of using figs that way. So we're asking people to submit different ways to include figs in their recipes and applications. So it gives us additional fodder and makes us really hungry right before we go to lunch when we start reviewing these recipes and think, oh my gosh, those look so good.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you and Sharon having me on today and allowing me to pontificate about all the wonders of our California figs, because we do find them a wonderful product, and we're delighted to be able to get the word out about them.
Thanks. And something that would be helpful for our listeners as you peruse the Valley Fig website for recipes and ideas and maybe enter the Mother's Day cooking contest with Cook's Country is Linda has generously offered a discount to our listeners.
Yay!
So if you go to the website and enter the discount code H2, you can get 25% off of your order. And that is good through March 27th.
March 27th, So we've got it out there for 30 days for your listeners.
Yay!
Perfect.
This is perfect. You guys, seriously, this is a great time to go ahead and just get some figs. Let's just cook. Let's cook. It's Mother's Day's around the corner, and let's get creative. I think this will be super fun. And so once again, Linda, thank you so much for, first of all, being on the podcast, also for the discount and just dropping some awesome information on us about figs.
Yes.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm delighted that you were able to find the time to have me on also, because we do just love to talk about our product and let people know about the goodness of everything and how they are California-based and our small little growers and our cooperative status. So it's a great thing for people to discover and really avail themselves to.
Yay. Okay, well, thanks again, Linda, and
my pleasure.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Thanks very much for your time today, Winter and Sharon. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Our podcast is brought to you by our awesome and food-loving sponsor, IKEA.
Yay, IKEA.
We are really excited because they are doing their annual Swedish Easter Påskbord. I don't know if I'm saying that right, Sharon.
I think so. Påskbord.
I'm not totally sure, but it's their Easter celebration that they have every year. And it's going to be happening at your local IKEA. So please check at IKEA.com for your local store to see when everything's happening at the Draper IKEA in Utah. If you're going to be here, Sharon and I are going to the 6:30 seating.
Yeah, and this is a buffet, you guys. This isn't some special sale that IKEA is doing or anything like that. This is food related. It is a buffet, and it is super tasty.
It's basically, they have all their Swedish meatballs and salmon and all of those things.
Yeah, they have their usual Scandinavian fare, but they also have some additional stuff.
Like Swedish ham, deviled eggs. I mean, come on. Like, this is good stuff. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It should be a lot of fun. So go chat with your local IKEA restaurant manager, and they can help you get tickets. Now, if you are a IKEA family member, and that is free to join, everybody. There are kiosks everywhere in the IKEA stores, and you can join, but that gives you a $4 discount off, basically. So for adults. So instead of $16.99, it's $12.99.
Which is a super good deal. And it's all you can eat, you guys.
Yeah. It's good food. I just think it's super fun. One other thing I just wanted to point out is that as part of I might put this little recipe up on there, but they have a little home activity they sent us.
Oh, yeah?
About natural egg dyeing.
Oh.
So because Easter is all about eggs, and Easter really is going to sneak up on us this year. It's April 1st this year. It's staying early. But you can use, I'm going to just say that you can use some natural colorants, turmeric for yellow, onion skin for brown, birch leaves for light green, beetroot peel, so that will give you brownish red, grape juice will give you purple, red cabbage, the whole leaves is purple, and then red cabbage chopped up is blue. I had no idea. I didn't know that was a thing.
I think you need to do a video of Lee and Lucy dyeing eggs.
Don't you think?
With this stuff.
Yeah, that would be kind of fun. And then beet juice will give you pinkish red. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with that. We should probably do a Facebook Live. That would be fun. I'm just saying. Anyway, we would love to see you guys out there at the Påskbord celebration. And thanks again, IKEA.
Thanks for joining us today for our show. You can find us at hungrysquared.com, on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play Music.
And you guys, once again, we want to say thanks to IKEA. We want to say thanks to Valley Fig Growers for their discount. And we love getting mail. We love getting mail.
Yes, so please email us
Yeah,
at hungrysquared@gmail.com.
Perfect. So that would be awesome. We didn't do a food fight segment this time around just because we had a great interview and we didn't want to cut that short. So we love getting mail. Send us mail. Yay! Okay, join us next week for our next episode of Food Nerdery.
Okay, love you. Bye.
Bye.
Hungry squared, yeah, hungry squared.